They came from the Pale, from a place called Jonava, Jonava, which was a suburb of outside of Vilna, which at the time when the Jews were advised that they would have the opportunity to get free land, turned out to be land that was disputed between Russia and Poland. But nevertheless, the Jews did move to the Pale, and Vilna became essentially the educational and the cultural capital of the Pale area. My grandfather, Harris Stern, and who I'm named after, was essentially orphaned. The mother and the father died. They owned a tavern, I would call it. They might call it something else, but when they died, they were then, as was the custom, taken care of by the closest family would take them in. And then what generally happened was that those children were lent out to other families that needed help, and the funds was rendered to the parents who had lent them out. So the children did not get anything except something that was quite precious. They learned trades. In fact, it enabled him actually leave the shtetl. And the way they had no money when they left the shtetl, but what I've been told was that an uncle or gave him money so that he could at least get out of the shtetl and go on to the next community or other communities where he would do exactly the same thing that he was doing all his early life. And slowly, over a 2-year period, made his way to Hamburg, Germany. There he had enough money to buy steerage to New York City. And this is a boy about 15 years old. You had to be 15 years old to come on your own. And as far as I could get from my father, there was an uncle that had already arrived. The uncle found that all the experience that he had indicated that he was a farmer, and also in fixing furniture, and also in working with his hands. And so what he said to him was, "This is no place for what you have learned," then proceeded to go, with help again from this uncle, to the farthest place that he could go by train, which was in St. Louis, Missouri. Gets off in Missouri, and he must have gone to some kind of a Jewish association. There was no family that we know of that was there. And he began to do the exact same thing that he had been doing on his trip from the Pale to Hamburg, and he farmed in St. Louis, in that area. How we know that is because he essentially married a young lady, and Lena from the Kaplan family. My grandfather had 5 children. First one was Flora. The second was my father, Michael. The third one was Ira. The fourth one was Herman. And the fifth one was Milton. In giving birth to Milton, she died. She died in childbirth. The father, Harris, could not take care of the new baby and could not take care of the young boys that were there in the family. So he sent the eldest child, which was Flora, and the two youngest children, which was the newborn, and that was Milton and Herman, back to St. Louis, Missouri, to the Kaplan family. And they too became essentially not leased out children, but essentially second-class children being raised in that family. They always felt that they were, and all of them couldn't get out fast enough. The father, knowing his own situations, was very upset about it, but couldn't do anything about it. As far as I can see, he farmed at least 3 or 4 different places. And he farmed in St. Louis, in that area. And he farmed outside in Peoria, Illinois. My father was born in Peoria, Illinois, and he was number 2. The third child was Herman, and he was born in Vincennes, Indiana. So from that, I can only deduct that he was, and that they were farming in that area. My grandfather, which I'm named after, as I said, he had, when he died, approximately 235 acres in New Jersey. I think it was Somerset. This 235 acres was sold in 1927 to the Marconi Company, which is the predecessor to RCA. They then built a huge telegraph tower. According to my daughter, she secured some information that I have, indicating that this tower was built and was used for transatlantic telephone calls or telegrams or whatever. And looking at the will, which was probated in 1927, that's when he died, I did not notice any individual by the name of Stern who had received anything. So I asked my father, what is this? Why wasn't there at least some Stern family included in the will? And he was very reluctant to tell me. I said, well, you can't use the argument anymore that I'm not old enough. Nor can you use the argument that I won't understand. So why don't you spit it out and tell me what the problem is? And what my father said to me, and this is the truth, well, Stern is not our real name, but you can't tell anybody. I said, why can't we tell anybody? Why do we have to not trace our ancestry back to where, at least to where we came from? And he said, well, whenever they took the name, they made the people who took the name of Stern not to reveal Galvansky as our real name. What they didn't know, legally, you could change your name to anything you want at any time, as long as you were over a certain age. At any rate, he had tried to swear me to secrecy on it. And I said, no, I would not do that. And indeed, what I did when I had many arguments with my father, I said, well, I remember one time I said to him, if you continue this way, I would have no difficulty going down to the registrar and changing my name to Galvansky. And it blew him up out of the water.